Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? Just raise your hand right there.
I'm playing scratchy records and enjoying my decline. No, I have a couple new books coming out this year, and I'm also doing a motion comic, which seems to be the wave of the future since print appears to be dying out.
Go ahead and explain what a motion comic is for our audience.
I'm doing one for the iPad application, iPhone, iPad, and basically it just takes one panel of a comic book and adds limited motion to it. So it's like halfway between a comic and a film. I'm pretty excited about that, especially for a guy that doesn't own a computer. It's a big challenge. So.
We're releasing Echoes of Lost Boys of Sudan. It's at the publisher, and then I'm working on another production on modern-day slavery, human trafficking.
Do you really not own a computer?
I have two, but they're not hooked up.
He has two, but he won't turn them on.
Kind of discipline.
Okay.
I go to the library and check my email.
He goes to the library to check his email. Okay. I'm going to make more comic books and comic book stories, and I'm really excited about making comic books that'll go straight to your computer or your telephone or whatever you want to read them on. So, I'm really old, so the people I've admired in music and in comics, they've been working a long time, and all of them have worked on many formats. The music people I like, they've been released on maybe 6 or 7 formats. So I don't care if you read it on paper or you watch it on your computer. I'll just keep doing what I do, and you read it however you want to.
It doesn't really change your job much.
I'm working also with Ape Comics, and they're a comic book publisher that currently has the DreamWorks license and are doing some DreamWorks properties, Penguins of Madagascar and Shrek. Free Comic Book Day. Be sure and go out to a comic book shop and get some free comics. One of them is an ape comic that is a flip book of Kung Fu Panda and Richie Rich. We will be doing brand new Richie Rich comics. It's the first new Richie Rich comic published in 20 years. Wow. So that's what we're up to. Free Comic Book Day is May 7th.
The first Saturday in May.
Right, May 7th. So head out to a comic book shop. Yeah, you can go to Free Comic Book comic shop locator. What's the comic?
I think freecomicbookday.com works too.
Freecomicbookday.com, yeah, and you can find your local comic shops there. Yeah, Dora, basically anything you like, there's a comic book for it. I'll promise you. You can just go out and look for it. You'll find it in a comic shop.
Basically, I'm working on some comics for Magic Wagon. That's mostly for if you're a library. People, you should recognize that imprint. I'm working on famous animals right now. I'm going to be doing Laika and Albert and some other things. I've been doing mostly autobiographical comics and some fill-in stuff for Antarctic Press.
What kind of biography comics?
Let's see. I've done historical events like Titanic. I've done in the Wright Brothers. I've done I did a series of president comics. I did Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Clinton, and I also did some classical adaptations like The Invisible Man and things like that.
That must have been easy to draw.
Oh well, you'd be surprised.
Sorry, that was
you'd
a
be
bad
surprised
joke.
how hard it is actually.
Well, great. We were kind of talking about the changing medium. We all talked about how we want comics on computers and iPads. I wonder if there's a preference in the audience. Do you prefer, I'm going to ask you if you prefer reading comics in your hand or reading them on your computer. So for everyone who likes comics in your hand, raise your hand. Okay? Now everybody who prefers them on the computer screen, raise your hand. Okay, all right. Just curious. Does that
Decent sized percentage.
Yeah. Does that give you guys hope? It doesn't really matter, right? Either way is fine. Great. So what are some of your favorite comics and some comics that you would recommend to our audience before we get back to some questions? Just asking the panel as a whole.
If you want kids to get into comics and you're kind of wary on content, I always recommend Archie comics, which have been out there for decades, and a lot of people just forget about them, especially when it comes to recommending titles. So, young kids, especially young girls, it appeals to them. So that's my vote for Archie.
My preference is Will Eisner's The Spirit. It might be a little PG at times, but it was a newspaper comic strip initially, so but it's family friendly, I believe.
My preference is Mouse by Art Spiegelman.
There's about 3 or 4 different titles that come out every month or every other month from Disney that still has Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, all those characters, and you know how safe that's going to be. And like Todd was saying, the Archie comics. And then we had a lot of comics that were like Teen Titans and things like that, that once again teachers would come in or parents would come in and use to teach their kids something that was interesting to them, but was English as a second language to get them to learn. Because like Gene Simmons from KISS, when he first came over to America from Israel, he couldn't understand the New Yorkers. So he used comic books to learn to speak and read English, and he eventually taught English before he became the, fire-breathing demon.
I can recommend 2 books. I can recommend a book called Amelia Rules, which is about a little girl about the age of the kids in here. And it's wonderful for the kids, but I've enjoyed reading it as well because it's very smart, very well put together. It's done by a very nice guy named Jimmy Gownley, and he actually makes a part of his career is going around to schools and talking to the kids, so he's very in touch. Amelia Rules. And another book that is wonderful for the kids right now is Mouse Guard. Mouse Guard is kind of like the Lord of the Rings of today, in that this cartoonist has figured out a wonderful new way to draw mice. Every cartoonist loves to be able to find a new way to draw a dog or a cat. Well, he found a great new way to draw mice. They're very cute, and it's all set in a world where they're living out in the woods and the fields, and they're trying to figure out to survive against cats and birds and things like that. And that's how they do it. It's really smart. It's good stuff. So there's wonderful stories being made right now. It may be, you have to look a little bit to find them because these kind of books don't have big advertising campaigns, but they are making them. A good way to find a fast track to find them is to look at your information through the American Library Association, because they have extensively read and tested and approved these things. So that's a good fast track.
I'm an ex-retailer, so recommending comic books comes naturally to me. For your digital people out there, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, I second the Archie Comics recommendation and would point out that there is a fantastic app out there that is nothing but Archie Comics. It's easy to find. So that's a great source for kids and totally family-friendly, kid-safe. Another great thing is Free Comic Book Day. Go get that Ape Comics flip book with Kung Fu Panda and Richie Rich. That's going to be great. And there's a game on the inside of it that I designed. So there's a game you can play with a comic. My best recommendation is Tiny Titans, though, a book by DC Comics. It is hysterical.
It's a great book.
Hysterical book, yeah. It's about children superheroes going to elementary school. Highly recommended and easily enjoyable by parents and children both. Friends of ours use it as bedtime stories for their kids.
And then you got PS 238, where them going to school and wanting to learn how to be superheroes.
I recommend for the younger set Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy, which is really good. I really enjoyed it. For tweens and a little bit older, again, Tezuka did a book called Adolf, which I thought was really well done and very very interesting. And Blackjack, which is also I consider very good. For older readers, I recommend Eagle, which is a manga about running for president. It's very engaging, surprisingly well done for a manga about our governmental system, which is I recommend highly.
My recommendation for the real little kids, I love this book out of Top Shelf called Owlie. It's a story of a young owl and his best friend, a little worm, Wormy. That works. For a little bit older, I recommend Tiny Titans as well. You stole mine. And then for adults out there, there's a great book out of Vertigo for 18 and over called Fables, which, if you like literacy, you'll really like it. It's all about all the classic myths come to life. We have questions. Yes, right there, right there. So, specific recommendations for teachers using comics.
DK Readers has a line of books that are comic book related, and they're also educational textbooks. I would recommend those. Really good material. I don't know if the Steve Irwin books are still available from the film that he was talking about, but those would be highly recommended. Classics Illustrated is always a good example of a comic to get in. Scott McCloud stuff. Hit a good comic shop and ask the comic book retailer. He'll talk your ear off about it too.
Let me add something too. Our story is current events, and according with the political upheaval right now in the Middle East, and Sudan is a Mideastern country, so that is definitely a current event story.
The Echoes of the Lost Boys of Sudan. You mentioned Mouse on your recommendation, and these are very hard-hitting, important stories. I recommend a war comic called The Other Side, which kind of explains things maybe from the Vietnamese point of view during the Vietnam War, as well as an American soldier. Comics has the ability to do very serious, very important stories incredibly eloquently. And why did you choose comics to tell your story, if you don't mind, Mr. Disco?
Well, it's a very graphic story, but in that medium, you can downplay it a little bit, and it can reach a wide audience as well.
Sure. The history of the state of Texas was made in the 20s, but we'll have these images forever, And
right. History doesn't change,
right.
supposedly. So.
History doesn't change, and the images stick with us for a very long time.
Barefoot Gen is another fascinating comic that was created by a man from Japan who survived the devastation and the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And it's a fascinating book and really, really powerful story.
And as far as teacher recommendations go, those what Weldon had mentioned that were in the film that Steve Irwin had done, it's Capstone Press, and the examples he gave were history, like Wright Brothers, that kind of thing. But I think they've expanded quite a bit, so they have a line of science books, a line of math books, and it's Capstone, so you can look them up online and find some good stuff.
I do know that there is a very successful line of biography comics. Blue Water Productions makes them. They just had an exclusive deal with Walmart to get their Justin Bieber biography comic. Groan if you want, but he's doing what he's doing, and it's getting kids to read. Still not worth it. Okay. I'll take your question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're screening quite a few places. Next weekend, actually, we'll be in Austin, Texas, at the Staple Independent Media Expo. I think you're going to be there with me. All right, it's a road trip. And the website for the film is comicbookliteracy.com, and it has my contact on it. So I'm definitely open to getting it out there in various distribution routes.